I didn't lose my seat at Christmas all at once. I lost it in a single, quiet moment that no one else seemed to notice, but one that changed something inside me forever. I was standing in my son's dining room, holding a bowl of mashed potatoes so hot it warmed my palms, when I realized the chair at the head of the table, the one I had sat in every Christmas for nearly 30 years, was no longer waiting for me. Not broken. Not moved. Just occupied. Someone else's coat hung over the back. Someone else's wine glass rested on the table in front of it, already claimed. I stood there for a second too long. Long enough to feel foolish. Long enough to feel invisible. I looked around, waiting for someone to notice. Waiting for my son to smile and say, "Mom, that's your seat." Waiting for recognition, for memory, for loyalty. My son was right there. And he said nothing. That silence did something to me that words never could. Christmas had always been my responsibility, but also my refuge. Not because I demanded it. Not because I wanted control. But because after my husband, Tom, passed away 15 years ago, Christmas became the one thing I held together with steady hands and stubborn love. The tree, the food, the traditions, they were how I reminded my children, and myself, that even after loss, life could still feel warm. I hosted Christmas when money was tight, when my back hurt from standing too long at the stove. When grief arrived uninvited and stayed longer than expected. I made it happen because it mattered. And I sat at the head of the table because Tom used to sit beside me. Because my children looked to me to say grace. Because that seat symbolized continuity, not authority. My son, Brian, grew up in that house. He watched me do it all. He knew what that chair meant. Or so I thought. Earlier that year, Brian suggested hosting Christmas at his place. "Mom, it just makes sense now," he said casually. "We've got more space. The kids have more room. You deserve to relax." His wife, Melissa, chimed in. "You shouldn't have to do everything anymore." The words sounded kind, but something in my chest tightened. Still, I agreed. Because that's what mothers do. We tell ourselves traditions can travel. We tell ourselves love doesn't need a location. I packed my traditions carefully. Not just the food, but the memories. The handwritten recipe cards. The ceramic angel Tom carved in the garage one snowy winter. The old table runner with the small burn mark from the year Brian tried to help cook when he was 9. I wasn't just bringing dishes. I was bringing my life. Brian's house was beautiful in a way that felt untouched. White walls. Neutral furniture. Everything placed carefully, as if no one had ever spilled juice or cried there. Melissa had planned everything down to the minute. "Dinner at 6 sharp," she announced cheerfully. "We're doing things a little differently this year." I smiled and nodded, reminding myself that new didn't always mean bad. Then dinner was ready. People gathered around the table. Plates were filled. Laughter floated in the air. That's when I saw Melissa's father sitting in my seat. He looked comfortable. Relaxed. Like he belonged there. Melissa noticed me standing frozen behind my chair. "Oh," she said lightly, like it was a small detail. "We thought Dad should sit there this year. You know, head of the table." Her father smiled politely. He wasn't the problem. I turned to Brian. He was close enough to see my confusion. Close enough to understand what was happening. He didn't say anything. Instead, he gave me a look that silently begged, "Please don't make this awkward." So I didn't. Someone slid a smaller chair toward the end of the table. Tucked between a high chair and the wall. I sat there, my elbow brushing the drywall every time I moved. No one apologized. Dinner went on. Stories were told that I wasn't part of. Plans were discussed that I hadn't been included in. My grandchildren looked past me toward Melissa for answers they used to ask me. I smiled. I nodded. I passed the rolls. But inside, something folded in on itself. After dessert, while everyone settled into the living room to watch a movie, I quietly put on my coat. Leaving already? Melissa asked, surprised. I'm tired, I said. Brian walked me to the door. Everything okay, Mom? I searched his face for recognition. For regret. For even a flicker of understanding. I'm fine, I said. That was the last lie I told him that night. When I got home, the house felt too quiet. I placed the ceramic angel back on its shelf and finally let myself cry, not loudly, not dramatically, but the kind of crying that comes when you finally admit something painful. It wasn't about the chair. It was about being erased. I realized something that night: the seat hadn't been taken in one moment. It had been taken slowly, through years of small dismissals and my own willingness to stay quiet. The next day, I didn't call. The day after that, I didn't text. I stopped reaching. At first, it felt wrong. Mothers aren't supposed to pull away. We're taught to absorb discomfort, to smooth things over, to forgive before anyone asks. But something had shifted. I saw clearly how much of myself I had been giving away quietly for years. Babysitting without notice, hosting without help. Rearranging my life to make everyone else's easier, so I started taking things back. Not with anger. With intention. When Brian called asking if I could watch the kids just for a couple hours, I said, I can't. There was silence. Why not? I already have plans. Sometimes my plans were coffee with a friend. Sometimes they were reading a book alone in my living room. They were still plans. I stopped hosting family dinners. I stopped coordinating birthdays. I stopped being the reminder system for everyone else's lives. Melissa texted one afternoon. Is everything okay? You seem distant. I replied, I'm taking care of myself. Months passed. I rediscovered parts of myself I'd put aside. I joined a painting class. I took long walks in the morning. I traveled, first small trips, then bigger ones. I spent money I'd been saving for someday. And something surprising happened. I felt lighter. When you stop being endlessly available, people notice. Brian noticed. Mom, he said one afternoon over coffee, you've changed. I met his eyes calmly. No. I stopped disappearing. He looked confused. Did I do something wrong? You let someone take my place, I said gently. And you didn't think it mattered. He stared at his cup for a long time. I didn't realize. That doesn't make it hurt less, I said. It just explains it. The next Christmas came quietly. I didn't wait for an invitation. I hosted a small dinner, friends, neighbors, people who saw me. I cooked what I liked. We laughed loudly. I sat at the head of my own table. The angel stayed with me. Later that night, Brian came by alone. I'm sorry, he said. I should have spoken up. I nodded. Yes. You should have. I want to do better. I'm not walking away forever, I said. But things are different now. And they are. I still love my son. I always will. But I love myself, too. Because it was never about a chair. It was about respect. And the moment I stopped begging for my place, I finally remembered how much space I deserved. So if someone ever strips you of your seat, at a table, in a family, or in your own life, remember this: you don't have to argue. You don't have to explain. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand up, walk away, and take everything back.